This is the Samaha Studio podcast, where we talk all things design. I'm your host, Amr Samaha, designer, architect, and CEO. Today, we sat down with Aren Bazerkanian, a watch designer who has just finished his flagship design, the HN00.
Please tell our audience a little bit about your journey and your company.
Sure. So I founded Havid Nagan in the second quarter of 2022. We launched the debut model, the HN00, and we sold about 115 of them. I'm glad to say we went above and beyond the expected sales that I had in mind. You know, when you're first starting off, you want to be conservative in your forecasting, but we went above and beyond, so I'm happy to report that.
That's amazing.
This one is a grade 5 titanium case, rated to 100 meters water resistant, time only, has a guilloche dial, 3 different dial variants. It will be discontinued. I've officially decided on that. The way you see it now.
Okay.
So the full dial and the type of guilloche you see will be discontinued, but there will be different iterations of the watch. And I've just been doing my best to, make sure the deliveries are on time. We did have a bit of a delay, as is expected in the industry nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing you can do with the supply chain shortages and whatnot. And working on the development of the second one. So
that's amazing. I have so many questions to follow up on this, and thank you for a thorough introduction. Mm-hmm. But the first question that comes to my mind is, how does one even start with designing a watch?
I'm glad you brought up that word, design. If there is a word that I suppose you can attach to my name, it would be, I guess, designer, because admittedly, I'm not a watchmaker, so I'm not the one sitting there and architecting the movements and whatnot. Essentially, find who I need to find to bring my vision to life. So I'll draw out the case, the dial, the different details. I suppose the first place I start with any design is inspiration. So I'll have an idea for, I want to do a chronograph, for example. I'll look into the history of what chronographs were, how they were done, who made them, why did they make them. I want there to be a reason for why I'm building what I'm building. That's where it'll start. The second part is actually drawing it out and putting it on paper. I'm not a CAD designer or anything like that, so I don't do anything on computer. It's literally just drawing it out on a piece of paper. Different, style hands, for example, and case designs and the flanks of the case and all that. Dial design is definitely where I focus most on. As far as where this came from, the OO, I'll start with the case. I always was a sports watch guy, so I always loved, just the kind of sort of that paradox in a way where you have such a, let's be, honest about it, an expensive thing on your wrist, but you're wearing it casually.
Yeah.
And, you go golfing or whatever you might be doing. You wear it with a white t-shirt and jeans and whatnot. So I always loved that quotient of a watch, a luxury watch. So I always knew it was going to be a sports watch. I was in real estate before, and I fell in love with a particular architect named Paul McLean. I'm sure you're very aware. What I realized mostly from what he was doing was taking what is familiar as far as, the white facades we see in the background and, the Hollywood Hills, LA type home, and just injecting nuance into it. And I saw all these curvatures and these crazy envelopes as far as pools are concerned, the glass windows and the nano doors that he would do. So it was something that was familiar, but it was like, I can identify what this is separate from everything else.
Yeah.
So I saw that, I'm like, man, that's what I need to do. I need to create my own identity. So the case design that you see itself a lot of it was taken as far as a philosophical idea in terms of how you present something to the world was a lot from, what Paul McLean was doing. It's the design itself, the geometry of it, the architecture of it is just my own expression of what I wanted a watch case to look like, I drew it out the way I did from the top view. And then through the technical development with the manufacturers and the suppliers, we kind of honed it down and made it what it is. So that's where the case design came from. I wanted it to be grade 5 titanium just because of its lightness and sturdiness. As far as the dial design, the OO, I always loved guilloche. The art of guilloche. And I wanted the OO series, so like I said, this first edition of it is going to be discontinued, but the next version of it will also be a different type of guilloche.
Yeah.
Different colors depending on where I go with it. The OO will always be a play on the art of guilloche. So different types of guilloche patterns. This one was obviously the barleycorn of it. I love applied indices, so it just added texture to the dial, so I always wanted that. The next watch will be totally and utterly different as far as dial is concerned. And you'll see that in the next coming months as I, preview it on Instagram and websites and whatnot.
Are we keeping the case shape?
Case shape, yes, for sure. That's going to be an identity of the brand. I want people to eventually, of course, as time goes, to see it on someone's wrist and be like, oh, that's a Havid Nagan, That's something that I realized was very, very, very important. That's where it really came from. As far as the movement is concerned, it was about finding a relatively fitting movement supplier or caliber that would power the watch, of course, and be on par with where I wanted the design to be. So in terms of quality, performance, and reliability, to be honest. So I partnered with a company called Schwarz-Etienne out of Le Chaux-de-Fonds, which is the heart of Swiss watchmaking. And they're very capable and just very talented group of people over there. And they manufacture their own hairsprings and balance wheels, which is already a feat in and of itself. The second one will be a partnership with them, but on the case making, we're going to be using a different movement maker this time, just because of the, how the dial design has to be calibrated. There's always limitations to what one company can do and what another can do. So
that's amazing. As a designer myself, I had a question. Is this inspired by Art Deco by any chance?
In a way, what you're seeing is a sort of modern cushion case from the vintage or neo-vintage 90s watchmaking. So, for example, Zenith used to do really interesting case designs. Patek Philippe, I learned more recently, used to do a lot of these like really fun, crazy, weird case designs that nobody does anymore.
Yes.
So I saw that. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, it really is unfortunate because to me, the case design alone is something to talk about on a watch. It's not just, hey, this is this brand. Oh, which reference? Oh, they stopped making it this time. And I think the case alone should be something to talk about. Dial should be something to talk about. Movement, all that. So yes, in a way, but it was mostly inspired by something modern, contemporary, and angular. Because I always loved, for example, when I was in high school, I used to draw a lot and do a lot of these sort of graffiti type things. I found myself always combining geometric shapes with sort of organic shapes. They would just kind of collide with one another. And, in a way, it has that. So it was, again, inspiration combined with my own expression of what I wanted on my wrist.
I can't tell you how cool this is to like play with it in person. That you could definitely feel the quality and sturdiness of the movement of the watch.
I was with a collector on Monday, and he came in from Ohio, and he had a pretty prominent independent watchmaker on his wrist and a heavy hitter watch. I was like, hey, let's exchange. I haven't worn it for a bit. Let me put it back on. He took this watch, and I took his. And of course, I loved the brand too, so I loved wearing that watch too. But he's like, man, I got to tell you, I know it's a relatively lower end as far as, $8,000 compared to like $250,000 watches and all that. He's like, this is really cool. Like the lightness of it, I don't even feel that it's on. My father said the same thing when he first put it on. I don't really feel like it's on there. It's kind of just easy to live with, which is exactly what I wanted for this. I want it to be a natural pickup, put it on, go about your day, hours, minutes, simple. This is the fun part of the industry. It's, you get your, the big name brands from, you've been collecting, everybody's been collecting these brands for generations. And there's nothing wrong with it. I get the quality, I get the story behind it, I get the craftsmanship and all that. The independence to me, and I think Max Busser put it the best way, was this is where the fun happens. You get to meet really cool people, passionate people.
Yeah, I agree.
They're thinking exactly the way you are. There's a reason they're in the same room as you. I'm not saying you're going to connect with all of them, but more or less you can bet on that you're going to make a few friends. The connection to the brand is by far the most important part to me. The collectors like you that supported me on the first round and continue to support me just by being my friend came from an independent brand. And we all love the watches. I'm not saying that's not important, obviously, but the people to me are what make it go beyond what the physical thing is.
Absolutely.
So that's the most important. You don't get that with big brands. It's not possible.
There is no sense of community.
No.
There is no like Rolex supper club.
No.
You know what I mean?
No. They're too big and they cannot deploy people, small enough in small enough communities to get the passion going. Whereas if you're a brand making in my case, 115 watches a year or whatever we're going to end up going to, or 1,000 watches a year, whatever it is, you can create
The sense of
a
community.
lot of passion and sense of community.
Yeah.
So I was spoiled in that regard because that was my first exposure to the watch world. I didn't go to a corporate world.
Yeah.
I was thrown into like a family basically, and that family just kept growing. That's my exposure to it. That's my context. I am good. I found the golden nugget basically.
You did.
I'm not in search of anything else. I'm good with my community. I want to obviously bring on more passionate collectors that support the brand. But as far as the brand presence is concerned and growing the brand, I want it to be boutique. I want it to be niche. I want to know my people first and foremost. So that's how I want to go about building the business.
That's amazing. And obviously we're in a similar stage in our varied businesses. And the one thing that I could attest to is the same understanding of a sense of community for small boutique businesses is like second to none. Your community is, what you rely on and how you actually grow your business, right? They're the reason why growth happens.
That word reliability is something that stretches not to, or it's not limited to, I should say, to the collectors supporting me as a brand, as consumer and brand. This past summer, I was fortunate enough to go visit Schwarz-Etienne and Journe, which is the dial maker for my watches. It was my first time visiting them, meeting them for the first time. I'd done video calls and conferences with them plenty of times before. They treated me literally like their son. That's what it felt like. Mauro, who was the CEO, Chantal and Luke, who was the technical guy, they took me to this restaurant on a farm that was just very Swiss, They took me to this 250-year-old restaurant in the middle of this place where I'm looking, I'm like, how did I put myself in this place, Like, I'm an Armenian kid from Pasadena, So they treated me like family, and I want that. I want that all around me. And, relative to our current society and how divided everything is, I actually search for that first and foremost is, am I going to connect with these people? And lucky enough, I can say that more often than not. So that's been my journey thus far. Let's see where I go from here.
I'm sure you're going places because there's already a lot of passion that you've proven to everyone, and it's probably why you've been able to beat your own expectations in terms of like watch sales and all that.
As you're starting something, especially something like this where you have these 250, 300-year-old brands, you're coming into it like, who the hell am I to build a watch brand?
I completely understand.
I'm not a watchmaker, I'm not the guy that's supposed to be starting his own brand. I realize first and foremost, people care about, do you care? Or what your why is. And I'm here because first and foremost, I'm an enthusiast. I passionately care about these things. First and foremost, there is nothing else I care about, as far as what I want to do with my life.
Yeah.
So I decided once I got into that company that I was at before, I found my meaning in life, if there is such a thing.
Your ikigai.
Yeah, right. And I said, I'm going to commit, man. As far as I can push this thing, I'm going to give myself to it. And thankfully, so far, it's sustained me. It's gotten me, and I don't mean just financially. I mean emotionally, mentally. It's allowed me to do what I want to do with my life for the last 8-9 months, whatever it's been.
Can you give us some teasers for what's to come with the 01?
Yes. The only reason I didn't before is because, and I like to build in public a lot of times. There are certain things where I will not reveal just because they're not concrete yet.
Yeah, I understand.
But it will be off-centered. The indications as far as what you see on the dial will be off-centered.
Mm-hmm.
The design language of the brand going forward will be that. Off-centered and partially exposed movements.
Okay.
On the front. The movement will be skeletonized. And you're going to get a much higher end finish, more or less. We're going above and beyond on this one.
Does that go both for the case and the movement?
The case will be further nuanced, so it'll be a thinner case this time around.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be more complicated, which I'm glad to say is, we're going more complicated, and it'll be thinner.
Yeah.
So it'll be a smaller presence on the wrist. The diameter of the watch itself will be more or less 40. I think this time around it's going to be 40.28 millimeters, so about the same as this.
Okay.
We shaved about 1.5 millimeters off, almost off.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So it's going to be, it's headed in the right direction. we're
We'll have to
working.
report.
Yeah. And no, because that was one of the biggest things for me was thinness. Just based off my context of what
Yeah.
I've seen before.
Yeah.
I always wanted that as far as a presence on the wrist. Case will be further nuanced. There will be certain parts of it that will be polished a little more. But what you see will be about 95% of what you see right now. Hands will be different. I won't say what kind they'll be, but they will be different. Dial finish will be significantly different. That's for sure. I'm not going to say where I'm headed with it, but it will be like totally and utterly different as far as what you see on the front.
So this is a major rehaul.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. I guess you can classify it as such.
This is much bigger than, Patek going 5711 to 6711.
No comment. I don't want to. I do have a red dot on my bed. So, yes, it will be much more significant than that, and it will be the precedent from that point on. Different ways, of course, in the future, but a lot of the collectors that I know personally, or I deal with on a more or less day to day, I've shown them a little bit of previews, and I'll show you, and eventually the public will see it too. So yeah, that's going to be the direction.
You know what you described in terms of it'll be different and it'll set the precedent. If you think about the first, product, first watch, it's a dot on a timeline, right? And that dot has no direction, right? The second dot is the one that sets direction and velocity.
Right. You're right. Absolutely.
So it's very natural for the first point to be an inception point, and then the second is where you really define that direction and define how fast things are going to change.
Right. In a way, I think of it because I think about this all the time. Is what was the point of this one? And I know it was the introduction of okay, here I am. This is more or less what you will see on the presence of a Havid Nagan on a wrist. And like you said, the second one's going to be oh man, like he's not messing around anymore. It's going to be a much more elevated watch. In the same way that this is, for example, the everydayer, if you want to call it, the next one is going to be, you're going to look at him like, man, like I can't stop looking at it because the finishing is going to be superlative. The dial texture is going to be something you don't really see very often. It's a sort of antiquated decoration technique in a way. Very, very, very niche brands do this kind of thing. So I want to kind of bring it into a more sportier and mainstream kind of conversation, I guess you can say. We're going to get only more complicated. I am a huge fan of retrograde functions and really putting complications wherever you kind of envision they should be, not having, the date has to be at the 3 o'clock position. Like I want things to be done the way I want them done. And I'll scour the earth to find the supplier or the movement maker or whoever that can make it happen. So
this is amazing. I personally started to levitate towards that later in my journey with independence, and without putting any companies on blast here, but exactly a retrograde movement that is, for a lack of a better descriptor, crazy in the industry.
Yeah.
And I think a lot more of that is needed.
It's something that's not done. I don't know if it's a means of dollar cost averaging or whatever these big corporations are doing. It's just not feasible financially. It's too complicated. Maybe for after sales it's going to be a mess. And it very well might be, but it's what I want to do. How else are you supposed to compete against these big brands? Are you going to come up with another stainless steel sports watch?
No.
You're not going to compete. There is no way. I realized very early on, the more nuanced it is, the more creative it is, the more me it is, the more chance I have in succeeding.
Yeah,
and the success is only, or it's predominantly metriced by me being able to bring the 13 or 14, 15 designs that I've already put together in year over year into the market. That is my dream. The financial part is just for me to live and eat and bring these things to life. So that's literally all it is.
It's super cool. And I have to tell you that I personally feel blessed whenever I'm having dinner or something with a friend and watches come up. I always mention that one of my friends
Thank you.
owns a watch company.
I appreciate it.
And you know that it's phenomenal because it's daring to go up against an industry that's like very established and has its
Ways of doing,
yes,
you know, what they've been doing.
The who's and who nots, right? You can't just. It's not. It's a private members club. You know what I mean?
It is.
You can't
very much so.
choose to just like walk your way into it, right? But what's really inspiring about your journey is when you did it, and you did it with, I want to say with a vengeance. You know, it's remarkable, honestly, what you've been able to achieve, and I'm extremely excited for the O1. I can't wait.
Final delivery of these two, of course.
Yeah, I mean,
we're working on it.
This is going to happen.
Yeah,
but I'm excited to be part of the journey, and I think to your point, this is a big part of what community is.
Yes.
Right. It's being able to partake in a journey together, right? And say that to whatever small degree that you were part of the creation of something is pretty damn cool.
I always had that in my mind when I was first working on the designs and developing the brand. I'm like, how am I going to compete against these people? How can I go up against these huge companies where they'll just their noise alone will drown me out?
Yeah.
And then I realized I'm not really going to compete with anyone. I mean, as far as someone spending money, the consumer spending money, sure. Am I competing in the market? Sure. I realized the more I differentiate, not just by the product design alone, and how it fits and what you get as far as money for value, what are you getting from me? And what you get from me is, you know, having friends like this, you know, Knife, for example, who, you know, I'm going to be making a trip to the Middle East, probably end of March next year. I've been working on a partnership with a prominent retailer over there, so we're going to do our announcement over there and make it a whole thing. He's like, "Come,
congratulations!"
Thank you. And it's been on the low down for now, and eventually we're going to announce it. So it was him. You know, it's people like him who invite me to his house and say, "Stay with me bring your family." Like literally, your entire family is invited to my house. We will go to this place and to this place and go into the desert and do. Where else do you find that? Like, you don't find that at corporate brands. So eventually, over time, I want to bring that in when, you know, we're big enough and there's enough cash flow and, you know, I can take those luxuries to entertain the collectors. I want that. Like, that's how you get close to human beings, you know? You do things together and you create memories together. So, and thankfully, I'm able to do it through this medium, you know? Like, we all communicate through this medium. So it's the blessing of my life, really, to be doing this, so.
It's inspiring. Everything that you're saying, I'm.
You live it too. It's not just.
I do. I do. You're absolutely right. But you know, it's a little different with architecture, or design, or development in general. You know, you go 8 to 10 years without seeing your thing come to fruition, right? So it's an extremely delayed sense of gratification.
It is, and I'm glad you bring that up because I'm working on the development of the second one now. So O1. The funny thing is, I've already moved on to the third one.
Yeah.
And I'm picking out the music that I'm gonna have in the product, you know, presentation and whatnot. And I'm like, man, and you also realize that as far as production timelines nowadays are concerned, I didn't know this. And you know, you're learning as you're going. It's my first time doing anything like this. So there was a slight scare, I guess you can call it, when I was in the process of currently while I'm in the process of developing the O1, was the timeline. And they initially coded me this crazy long timeline where I'm like, guys, I can't, there's no way.
How long?
Just to have the prototypes delivered, we were looking at 14 to 16 months. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Just for the prototypes.
Wow.
So I can't do anything until then. So we had to sort of work around it, and we had to make a few compromises of what you will see when you have a O1 prototype. You live and learn. Like now you know, or now I know, when an order is submitted, for example, this one, immediately you go into development, or should already be in development for the second one, or the next one.
Yeah.
So now I know. I didn't know. And you know, you live and learn, like we were talking about earlier. It's just something that you need to learn as you're going, because there is no other way you're going to learn. Unless someone comes and tells you.
Yeah.
Directly, you know.
Yeah. You know, we're probably on maybe our 30th in-house project of varying sizes, you know, from single families to hotels and whatnot. and we're yet to see the completion of the first one, right?
So crazy.
So to just show you the spectrum, right, that we're looking at, on our part, we're done with 30 different products.
That's city. That's Los Angeles
Right?
City for you. Yeah.
But we're yet to receive the first one of the series of 30 that we're already committed for.
Sure.
So this is why this is fascinating to me, right?
Well, and you know, who knows what happens next year, you know, with economic slowdown and all that. Some people are saying, don't worry, Aaron, it's going to be much easier next year as far as timelines are concerned. Some people are saying, no, it's crazy. Like the people that I'm working with, or the companies I'm working with, are working with some of the biggest brands you know.
Yeah.
And when I'm making, for example, 150, 200 units or whatever the number is going to be for the next one, how can you push them to prioritize you, you know? And you have to basically compromise here to make it up here. And not in terms of the product design. The product design is always going to be what I envision it to be. And if I need to wait a little longer, then so be it. But to speed things up, we had to, for example, there'll be non-functioning prototypes.
Yeah.
Which you'll see 95% of what it will be, but you just can't manipulate. It won't tick. Yeah, exactly. So the funny thing is, it's so amazing what these guys can do. We had to have the conversation of, you know, look, we can do this to speed it up, non-functioning. I'm like, but you know, I probably have 2 or 3 friends that are very close to me who always end up buying the prototypes. Can we retrofit a working and finished movement? And so I say, yeah, there's no problem. So that's a good thing, you know. They'll eventually be sent back and they'll come back to in working condition and fully finished condition. So, and there'll be prototypes. A part of me says that the people that buy the prototypes will say, actually, you know what? Don't finish it. Don't finish it. Like, have it work, but don't finish it because, you know, down the line prototype's sake and blah, 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 you know, auctions and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So.
You know, it's interesting how you're looking at this as a compromise. And in my mind, it's just doing business.
You have to do it.
Yeah,
there is no other way.
Yeah.
Because the alternative is you wait 14, 16 months for just the prototypes. I'm like, I cannot.
No.
There's no way. So thank God for, you know, really high-end rendering and finished rendering so you can see what the final thing will be. I was talking to a guy at a recent event. He's a collector. He's a relatively newer acquaintance of mine, I suppose, but we hit it off very quickly. I was just describing the watch to him. I didn't show him anything. I didn't talk about it in much detail. And he took this one, and it was the first time he was seeing this one. He put it on his wrist, and he said, "Aaron, sight unseen, let me know it's sold. I want it." And that's happened maybe 10 or 15 times now. Yeah. So with different collectors. So it's a good feeling, you know. It feels good to have people validate and tell you, yes, I want the next thing, without even having put on the first one and not even seen the second one. That feels good as a you know, as designer or whatever you want to label me, founder. But again, it comes with a certain responsibility, you know, execute. You know, don't ever hold back on what you're doing. And I'm glad to say also the collector demographic that I have is very used to a higher end product. So I'm glad to say that those parameters are much wider of what I can take in liberty of finishing, the level of finishing, you know, because everything costs a lot of money. It's crazy how expensive it is to develop these things.
Yeah.
So you change one little thing, oh, we have to redevelop it, and it's going to cost this $1,000, you know. And that's the way it is, you know. It's just, but you want it to be what you envision. So
yeah. When do you think we're gonna be able to see your first prototypes? And when are they
for the second watch?
Yeah, and when are they going for sale? Where do I sign up?
They're basically pre-sold.
So I didn't get the memo.
We'll talk. So there will be 4 prototypes, 3 or 4. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be 4.
Oh, you mean the prototypes are pre-sold?
No, not the watch itself. My father always wants one prototype. Just, you know, he wants to collect his son's, you know, creations. My best friend, Knife, who, you know, that's how we met. And there is a potential partnership that I'm working on domestically on the East Coast, who I won't name who it is. It's potential. It's not a for sure thing yet, but we have a really good idea of something that both of our cultures are more or less the same. So we want to do something, on that side. I want to say, by God's grace, June, July.
Okay.
We'll see the prototypes. I'll do my marketing and the presentation and how I'm going to present it to the world on the stage. Do a subscription this time around too, just because that's the easiest way for me to do this at this point, and really the only way I can do this at this point. It'll be more or less the same timeline as this. We were able to work out a pretty sweet deal in terms of like timelines for production and whatnot. So more or less the same timeline as this, and I have a feeling that it will be lessened. It's working out so far in the right direction.
That's amazing. Before we kind of wrap things up, I see that you got a few different straps, and it's not your typical strap, so it's not this, right?
Right.
So just talk to us about what you thought when you were doing that.
What I wanted the design of the watch to be was more like this fluid thing on your wrist. I wanted the strap to be a part of it. I didn't want it to be different compartments come together. I wanted it to look fluid. I worked with Journe on this, who did a phenomenal job. And in my opinion, they are the best in the industry to work with. So Pierre-Louis is my contact over there. And he and Nathaniel, who is the guy that essentially, does this. He'll literally like put these together and bolster them. So I told him, look guys, here's the case design. I want it to mimic the case design. You can see here, it mimics this structure here, the lugs. It is Alcantara suede. The reason I ended up doing Alcantara is because one, no one really is doing it. And I always loved the look of Alcantara. There's something posh about it. I think it elevates watches. In terms of colors, I'm a huge fan of being able to play with different colors on watches. It changes it totally. For now, obviously, we have this beige, sort of neutral kind of, look going about it. But I had it on this sort of burnt orange kind of strap. It totally changes and makes it like this fall type of,
Christmas.
Christmas in a way, you think about the leaves on the floors, and what we had to do, the way the affixation works to the case are these two screws here. You see here. It makes it very sturdy. These are brass inserts that we had to develop. Now, this is not the cheap way of going about doing this. The cheapest way would be for me to have them have the same lugs, inside have pins that you can push from here. I wanted it to be done this way because it would make it more fluid and connected to the case. So these literally will get inserted into the hooded lugs, they call them. 2 screws will go underneath. When you're screwing it, you feel how sturdy it is. Like, it's not going anywhere. You can't break them. When I had it on a prototype strap, a good friend of mine was like, hey, I just snapped the insert. I was like, dude, they're 3D printed inserts. Like, this is just for prototyping purposes. And he's like, this isn't gonna happen on the real thing. I'm like, no, there's no way. So I'm glad when they finally came, because this was like it was keeping me up at night. Like, are these things gonna be sturdy? Are they gonna be really good? They're not going anywhere, man. Like, that's amazing. Are stuck. And another part of it is like, oh, well, how hard is it to take them off and put another strap on? I want you to interact with the watch. I find great pleasure in sitting there and just taking 10, 15 minutes to just do my thing and take it apart and, kind of look at the watch case and the head alone, and it connects you to the thing, and you're paying a lot of money, let's be honest, a lot of money for these things that are, they're luxuries. You don't need them in life. So take some time to live with the thing, to interact with the things. It'll take some time for people to get used to, that's for sure. But I guarantee you're gonna fall in love with it.
These are going nowhere.
It's, I'm telling you, it's not a joke.
Can't really.
No.
Can't really manipulate.
And the funny thing is, they are sturdy made. Like, the bolstering is really pronounced that you'll see over here, but they are supple. They're very, very comfortable to wear.
I could attest to this.
Yeah. I'm really glad it came out the way it did. And like I said, Journe, my hat's off to them. They're, in my opinion, the best. And
I genuinely love how you decided to go with playful colors alongside neutrals.
Yeah.
Obviously, you could tell that, I play with color a lot.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to be able to enjoy a little bit of color every now and again.
Well, it's the fun of it. I always tell people, yes, these are, just by virtue of how they work, the mechanical nature of them, and there's engineering behind it, and there's math behind it, and angles and amplitudes and all that stuff. Yes, they are complicated and technical, and that's fun to talk about. But it's also an innocent joy, you know, like have fun with it.
It's
if
an
your
expression.
and if your personality is this
Red today.
or red or whatever it is, so be it. You know, it's your thing. It's as far as this is concerned, you know, a man's really only way to, as far as jewelry is concerned, other than like a chain or a wedding ring or whatever it is.
A man's watch is one of the most.
It's something that you express yourself to.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Why not go? You know, if you want to go far out, go far out. If you want to be neutral, be neutral. I wanted to give people the option of both. So.
No, I appreciate that perspective a lot, even though mine is very neutral.
No,
but
mine is neutral today too. I had it on this, and it was really fun.
Yeah. And I've had I've had some very loud colors on other straps, and I think they bring out a different character. To your point, they make a very dressy watch,
For sure.
Very understated in a way, because when it's an extremely complicated piece, you assume it's going to be on a brown alligator strap or a black alligator strap, right? Like it's just one of those two.
Sure.
So I think this is extremely down the right path, in my opinion.
And now I think the market understands that. Like back in the day when the demographic for connoisseurs or collectors were 50, 60-year-old men, whatever it was. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. It's just that's what it was before. Now it's the 22-year-olds and so on that are doing these fun things, and they expect fun combinations. And you can have a $250,000, $300,000 watch and it could be this very traditional looking watch, but you'll have it on a teal strap. And it's like, it introduces a whole different dynamic to the thing.
Yeah, I had one of my watches on a Tiffany blue strap, so like that pop blue, and it was a very, very traditional,
Right. It brings a certain casualness to this thing, which to the outside world, to the people that aren't so into watch collecting or understanding what these things are, it makes it much easier for them to be like, oh, I'm interested in this. Let me get into this, you know? Yeah. Well, it's easier for them to get introduced.
Yeah.
As opposed to, oh my God, like that's a businessman, you know? That's I can't go and talk to this guy. You know, it just makes it easier for people to get into. So why not?
Yeah, I appreciate your time. I appreciate having us sit down. It's been fun.
Absolutely.
Have you around. Thank you. All right, thank you guys for joining in. Please do follow Havid Nagan and Aren, my friend. Do subscribe to his next watch if you're interested in watches. You won't regret it. Till next time.
All right.
Woo!
Perfect.